This article is credited to Femi Fani Kayode, and a lot of you might have some resentment to what he has said, while some might say, well, this is the reality. Let's call a spade a spade. But whatever it is that you have concluded upon, please do drop it in the comment section below. It says in the last 80 years, the Igbos have been shown more generosity and accommodation and warmth and kindness, and they've been given more opportunities and leverage by the Yorubas than they have given to the Yorubas in their own space, in their own territory. What they have never allowed us to do in theirs, this has been so for 80 long years, and it is something that we are very proud of. The reason why many of our people take strong exceptions to the apparent outrage of the Igbos over this deportation issue and the provocative comments of my friend and brother, Chief Ojuzo Kalu, when he described Lagos as being a no man's land, is because the Igbos have not only taken us for granted, but they have also taken liberty for license. We cannot be expected to tolerate or accept that sort of irreverent and unintelligent rubbish simply because we still happen to believe in one Nigeria, and we will not sacrifice our rights or prostitute our principles on the altar of that one Nigeria. Whether Nigeria is one or not, what is ours, and no one should test our resolve or make any mistake about that. It is that some attitude of we own everything, we must have everything, and we must control everything that Igbo settlers manifested in the northern region in the late 50s and early and mid 60s that got them into so much trouble up there with the Hausa Fulanis, and that eventually led to the terrible pogroms where almost 100,000 of them were killed in just few days. As a matter of fact, they were the ones that first introduced tribalism into southern politics in 1945 with the unsavory comments of Mr. Charles Daddy Onyema, who was a member of the Central Legislative Council representing Enugu, and who said at the Igbo State Union address that the domination of Nigeria and Africa by the Igbos is only a matter of time. That single comment made in that explosive and historic speech did more damage to Southern Nigerian unity than any other in the entire history of our country, and everything changed from that moment onwards. To make matters worse, in July 1948, Chief Nnamdi Azikiwe made his own openly tribal and incendiary speech, again at the Igbo State Union, in which he spoke about the God of the Igbos, eventually giving them the leadership of Nigeria and Africa. These careless and provocative words cost him dearly and put a nail in the coffin of the NCNC in the western region from that moment on. This was despite the fact that the same NCNC, which was easily the largest and most powerful political party in Nigeria at that time, had been funded and established by a great and illustrious son of the Yoruba by the name of Herbert Macaulay. Macaulay, like most of the Yoruba in his days, saw no tribe, and he happily handed the leadership of the party over to Azikiwe, an Igbo man. In 1945, when he was on his dying bed, can there be any greater evidence of our total lack of racial prejudice and tribal sentiments than that? If the NCNC had been founded and established by an Igbo man, would he have handed the whole thing over to a Yoruba man on his deathbed? I doubt it very much. Again, when northern military officers mutinied, effected their revenge coup, and went to kill the Igbo military head of state, General Aguiyi-Ironsi, on July 29, 1966, in the old western region, his host, the Yoruba, Colonel Fajuyi, who was military governor of the western region at that time, insisted that they would have to kill him first before taking Aguiyi-Ironsi's life. And the northern officers, led by Major T.Y. Danjuma, as he then was promptly obliged him by slaughtering him before killing Aguiyi-Ironsi. How many Igbos know about that, and how many times in our history have they made such sacrifices for the Yorubas? Would Aguiyi-Ironsi or any other Igbo officers have stood for Fajuyi or any other Yoruba officers and sacrificed his life for him in the same way that Fajuyi did? Had the roles been reversed? I doubt very much. Yet, instead of being grateful, the Igbos continually run us down, blame us for all their woes, envy our educational advantages, and resent us deeply for our ability to excel in the professions and commerce. Unlike them, we were never traders, but we were and still are industrialists. And when it comes to professions, we are producing lawyers, doctors, accountants, and university graduates at least 3 generations before they ever did. That is the bitter truth. And they have been trying to catch up with us ever since. Now, let us look at a few historical facts and 1 or 2 more Igbos. First, that many may not be familiar with to buttress the point. The Igbo people were the first to carry out the failed coup on the night of January 15, 1966, in which they drew forced blood and openly slaughtered and butchered leading politicians and army officers from every single zone in the country except their own. I should also mention that even though this was clearly an Igbo coup, there was one Yoruba officer who was among the ringleaders by the name of Major Adewale Ademoyega. It was a very bloody night indeed. They did not just kill those revered and respected leaders, but in some cases they mocked, tortured, and maimed them before doing so, took pictures of their dead and mutilated bodies, and killed their wives and children as well. For weeks after these horrific acts were carried out, the Igbos rejoiced and celebrated them in the streets and markets of the north, openly displaying pictures and posters of the Saudana mutilated body with Izeogu boot on his neck, loudly playing a famous and deeply offensive anti-Northern song in which Northerners were compared to goats, and listening to it on their radios, jubilating that they had brought an end to what they described as Northern rule and Islamic domination, and openly boasting that they themselves will now rule Nigeria forever. Though the first coup failed, the matter did not end there. The very next day after the January 15 mutiny and butchery had failed and did not result in Ife-Joanna taking power in Lagos, the Igbo people set their plan B in motion. And they were the first to carry out a successful coup in Nigeria just 1 day later on January 17, 1966. This was when the Igbo Major General JTU Aguiyi-Ironsi, who was Supreme Commander of the Nigerian Army and who had inexplicably and suspiciously not been murdered by the young Igbo officers in their violent mutiny and killing spree the night before in collusion with the Igbo acting president, Nwafor Rizu, and the entire Igbo political leadership of that day, invited the remnants of Sir Tafawa Balewa cabinet to a closed-door meeting, threatened their lives, and took power from them at the point of a gun. Aguiyi-Ironsi did not just ask them to give him power, but he took it from them by force, by telling them that he could not guarantee their safety if they refused to do so. Meanwhile, Orizo point-blank refused to do his duty as acting president and swear in Zana Buka Dipchakrima as the acting prime minister when the members of the cabinet and British ambassador, who was also at the meeting, implored him to do so, since by that time there was a power vacuum because Prime Minister Sir Tafawa Balewa had gone missing and had probably been murdered. It was these very suspicious circumstances and as a consequence of their murky and deep-seated Igbo conspiracy that General Aguiyi-Ironsi came to power. Amongst those that were present at that famous meeting that are still alive today are Alhaji Maitama Sule, Chief Richard Akinjide, and President Shehu Shagari, who were all ministers in Balewa's cabinet. Those that doubt the veracity of my account of this meeting will do well to ask any of them exactly what transpired during that encounter. Yet, the seeming success of the conspiracy was short-lived. Only 6 months later, on July 29, 1966, General Aguiyi-Ironsi and no less than 300 Igbo army officers reaped the consequences of their actions and plot when they were all slaughtered in just one night during the Northern Officers' Revenge Coup. Lieutenant Colonel Yakubu Gowon was put in power by this group after that, and a few weeks later, between September 29, 1966 and the middle of October of that same year, approximately 50,000 Igbo civilians were attacked and slaughtered in a series of horrendous pogroms in the north by violent northern mobs as reprisal for the killing of the northern leaders, including Sir Ahmedu Bello, the Sultan of Sokoto, by Major Nzeogu, Major Ife-Joanna, and other junior Igbo officers on the night of January 15, 1966. The Igbo understandably left the north in droves after those terrible pogroms and fled back to the east from whence they came. And perhaps that would have been the end of the story, but for the fact that they also declared secession and sought to dismember Nigeria, they then made their biggest mistake of all by provoking a full-scale military conflict with Nigeria, when they launched a vicious and unprovoked attack against the rest of the South, attacking and conscripting the Eastern minorities, storming the Midwest, and attempting to enter Yoruba land through Ore to capture it. Thankfully, they were stopped in their tracks by the gallant efforts and courageous fighting skills of the 3rd Marine Commando, which was primarily a Yoruba force and which was under the command of Great Colonel Benjamin Adekunle, the Black Scorpion, prevented them from entering west, driven out of the Midwest, pushed back into the east, defeated in battle after battle, and were eventually brought down to their knees and forced to surrender to the federal forces in Enugu. The Igbos and their Biafra fought Nigeria and killed Nigerians for 3 hard years in the brutal civil war in which over 1 million courageous, loyal and faithful sons and daughters of Federal Republic of Nigeria lost their lives at the war front trying to stop Biafra from seceding from the Federation, from taking our land and taking the minority groups of the Midwestern regions and Eastern regions and our newly discovered oil with them. Yet, despite our massive casualties and the monumental loss of life, the federal side suffered a total of 2 million people died. Both sides, the Igbo people were welcomed back into Nigeria after the war with open arms. Yet, it was only in Yoruba land, and especially in Lagos, that they were given all their abandoned properties back and welcomed back. Even their brothers in what we call Port Harcourt did not even do so. Everywhere else in the country, for many years, they were denied, deprived, shunned, attacked, killed, discriminated against, and humiliated, but never in the southwest of Nigeria, never in Lagos. It is the Igbo people more than any other that have complained about marginalization in Nigeria, forgetting that there is no other country in the world in which there was a major civil war. Yet, only 10 years after that war ended, the losing side produced vice president for the whole country in a democratic election in 1979 in the distinguished person of Vice President Alex Ekweme. Some have described my submissions in this debate as being inflammatory, and have claimed that I'm not a true progressive person. I reject these labels. And I wonder whether those people that conjured them up describe the comments of my dear friend and brother, Chief Oje Uzokalu, inflammatory. Worse, whether they labeled him as not being a true progressive when he erroneously claimed that Igbo generated 55% of the revenue and owned 55% of businesses in Lagos, and that they are effectively the owners of Lagos State. Unlike most of them that are attempting to label me and brand me as a tribalist, I know the issue of Lagos and Yoruba very well. We will not let anyone poison the minds of our Yoruba youth or dispossess them of their heritage by keeping silent when we witness this irresponsible and dishonest propagation of the most desperate and despicable form of historical revisionism that some Igbo leaders are suddenly churning out. If anyone thinks that they can intimidate us into keeping quiet when their leaders say such things, then they will have the biggest shocker of their lives. We shall not be silenced, and they shall not pass. Lagos and the Yoruba generally have much stronger historical culture and trading ties with Ishekiri, Irobo, and Isoko, Tapas, Nupes, Ijos. The input of those other major groups to the development of Lagos and their stake in R is far greater than that of the Igbos. We, the Yoruba, have accommodated others in Lagos and throughout the Southwest, and we have let them live in peace for the last 100 years. As a matter of fact, we have been glad to do so because, as far as we are concerned, that is one of the hallmarks of civilization, the ability to accommodate other faith, other religion, other cultures, other races, and other nationalities. The Igbos are the least close, the most distant, and the least familiar with our customs and our ways. They ought to be the last to be claiming our heritage and coveting our land. Neither can they claim to have made any real input to our glaring success. For them to think otherwise is nothing but delusion. So, like I said, this is an article by Femi Fani Kayode. Do not get it twisted. He is married to a Biafran, to an Igbo woman. So do not think this article that he has written is because he has this hatred and would not marry an Igbo woman or a Biafran.